Have you ever seen a word in another language and wondered, how do I even pronounce that? Today, we're going to learn the difference between translation and transliteration and why that difference can completely change the way we understand biblical names and places. Let's start with something you may already know: translation. Translation takes the meaning of a word from one language and expresses that same meaning in another language. For example, the Spanish word perro means dog in English. The meaning crosses from one language to another. That's translation. When scholars translated the Bible, they took words written in ancient languages and expressed their meaning in English, Spanish, French, and hundreds of other languages, so people could understand what the text says. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Transliteration is something completely different. Transliteration doesn't translate the meaning of a word. Instead, it represents the sounds of one writing system using the letters of another writing system so that people unfamiliar with the original alphabet can pronounce the word. Let's look at an example. This word on the screen is written in the Ethiopic script, which is used for languages such as Ge'ez, Amharic, and Tigrinya. Most of us can't look at those characters and immediately know how to pronounce them. When we transliterate the word, we might write it as Bet or Betty, depending on the language. Now we have a guide for saying the word. Notice what happened. Transliteration didn't tell us what the word means. It simply helped us pronounce it. The word itself means house. Think of it this way. Translation equals what does it mean? Transliteration equals how do you pronounce it? Here's something that surprises many people. After a word is transliterated, it can often be spelled several different ways, and all of them may be correct. Why? Because different languages have different letters and sounds. When scholars try to represent the sounds of one language using another alphabet, there isn't always a perfect one-to-one match. Take the biblical name Cush, for example. You may also see it written as Cush or Cush. Another example is Ezra, which can also be written as Esdra, as in the Apocrypha. These are not different places or different names. They are simply different transliterations of the same original word. Each spelling reflects a slightly different attempt to represent the original pronunciation using the English alphabet. Now let's talk about why this matters, especially when studying biblical locations. While researching biblical place names, I noticed something important. Many of the names we use in English today pass through several languages, including Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and eventually English. At each stage, small changes in spelling and pronunciation were introduced. Over centuries, those small changes accumulated, and many names now sound quite different from how they may have originally been pronounced. Because of that, I didn't want to rely only on the familiar English spellings, because these can be very unpredictable. Just because something has a transliterated name doesn't mean that it sounds like the word that it was derived from. There are many examples that I can give, but here are a few. Genesis 24:12 states, "And the servant took 10 camels of the camels of his master and departed, for all the goods of his master were in his hand. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia unto the city of Nahor." Mesopotamia is really Aram Naharaim. Another example is Genesis 2:14. "And the name of the third river is the Tigris, which flows east of Assyria. And the fourth river is the Euphrates." The underlying word is Hidekel for Tigris and Parat/Parath/Peret for the Euphrates. As we discussed in a previous video for Sudan, Assyria is used instead of Ashur. So instead of using the transliterated names, I compared how these names are pronounced across several ancient and related language traditions, including Hebrew, Greek, Ge'ez, Amharic, Tigrinya, and Arabic. Why those languages? Because together they preserve linguistic traditions that have existed throughout the biblical world for thousands of years. Ge'ez is an ancient liturgical language that has preserved many older forms, while Tigrinya, Amharic, and Arabic retain sounds and naming traditions that can provide valuable points of comparison. As many of my previous videos have shown, Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea preserve numerous biblical place names whose pronunciations often resemble older forms much more closely than the English versions we commonly use today. By comparing the phonetic patterns across these languages, I believe we can sometimes arrive at a pronunciation that is closer to the original than the familiar English form. So, what makes my research different? I am not looking at transliterated names. I am looking at the phonetic sound of the word in Hebrew, Greek, Ge'ez, Tigrinya, Amharic, or Arabic. Now let's look at an example. The name Eve. In the Hebrew text, Eve's name is commonly transliterated as Hava, Hava, or Hawa, depending on the transliteration system being used. When the Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek, the Greeks represented the name using the closest sounds available in their own language. Later, as the name passed through Latin and eventually into English, additional changes occurred until the familiar English form became Eve. Over time, translators and scholars also adopted spelling conventions that fit their own languages. Sounds represented by letters such as Y, W, or B often shifted according to the pronunciation patterns of each language. Now listen to how this name appears in several languages. Hiwan, Ge'ez, the ancient liturgical language of Ethiopia; Hawa, Arabic; Hiwani, Amharic; Hiwana, Tigrinya; Hawa, Swahili. Notice how closely these pronunciations resemble one another and how different they sound from the English name Eve. Personally, I prefer using Hawa or, in Ethiopian traditions, Hewani, because I believe those forms preserve much more of the original pronunciation than the English name Eve. Throughout this channel, you'll often hear me use those older forms when discussing biblical people and places. Perhaps you may also consider using the name from the region. The same is true for many other personal names like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These are not their true names. As we continue this journey together, we'll take a much deeper look at biblical languages, ancient pronunciations, and how recovering original names may also help us recover forgotten identities. Every name has a history. Every place has a story. And sometimes recovering the original sounds helps us recover hidden identities. That's exactly what we'll be exploring here on Unsealed Identities. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy exploring biblical languages, ancient place names, and the hidden history behind Scripture, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Also, make sure to hit the notifications bell so that you know when a new video is released.